All right, everybody. Hey, we're in a series called At the Movies. We're using movies to dive into scripture, what it means. I got a prize. A brand new North Coast 5-pound hat. All right, hang on. Sit down. Hands down. Who can tell me what the last two movies were? And hang on. Whoa. Sit down, Darian. And can tell me what the main idea was. Okay. Hey, whoa. What are you used to? Hands down. Okay, I'm gonna say hands down or you're disqualified. I'm gonna hands down. Would you stop any shadow puppets? Oh my god. Alright, I'm gonna say 3, 2, 1, go. If your hand goes up early, you're disqualified. Wait, no, what happens? How does it end? Is that the dad? Okay, alright, great job. Alright, ready? 3. Alright, no more shadow puppets. 3. If your hand goes up early, you're 3, 2. Ernie, you're disqualified. Ready? 3, 2, 1. I didn't say go. I didn't say go. Okay, ready? Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. Stand up. Say what's your name? What? Great. Okay, what was the last 2 movies? What was week 1? Okay, what was the main idea? Okay, what was week 2? Yes! Here you go, good job. Okay, so, 2 weeks ago, we talked about Toy Story. Hey, if you're doing shadow puppets, I'm gonna punch you in your face, okay? That's going on YouTube forever. Okay. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about Toy Story. We talked about that Buzz was in an identity crisis, and he found his identity in the wrong things. We relate that to us, that our identity is found in the image of God. I know, 8th grade boys, there are some cute girls around Ben Elmore. I know, I get it. They're so distracting. I get it. We have 1 more week to listen up. But, okay, Toy Story, identity crisis. Then, last week we talked about inside out our emotions and how we have many different emotions. That's okay. They were designed that way. But we have to be able to control them and how we use them. So tonight, we're going to take a different approach on one of my favorite illustrations in the Bible. I think I say that every single week because there's so many good ones. But here's why this one's important. Because it relates to every single one of us at some point in our lives on a very deep way. Okay? Now some of you are going to hear this whole thing and you're going to go, well, I haven't been there. That's okay. You're probably going to be there at some point. Whether it's junior high, high school, adulthood, whatever. This happens to us. Right? It's a very common issue that goes through humans and then we process through, okay? But here's how our story begins. One day, suddenly, you were born, and it looks something like this. This movie shaped my childhood. I love this movie. My kids love this movie. I called Maggie earlier as I was getting ready, and I was like, hey, do I show the old one or the new one? And she said, ha, the old one. Okay. Because it's so much better. But here's the deal, okay? If you got your Bible, open up to Luke chapter 15. Luke chapter 15. If you need a Bible, go ahead and throw your hand in the air and wave it like you really do care if you didn't get your Bible. Tonight, we're going to talk about a story very similar to Simba when he goes through it. But if you need a Bible, go ahead and throw that hand up. What do you want to hear? Ruby said, what are we doing? We're looking at the Bible. Chapter 15. Luke chapter 15, okay? Now, here's what we're going to do. This section of scripture is where Jesus begins to tell stories and illustrations in what we call the parables, okay? Now, a parable is basically just an example, an illustration, something that Jesus says, hey, let me help you understand something. And like we talk about all the time, the parables help us because I think I said this like a couple weeks ago, but if you don't like to read, you like movies, this was kind of like their movies back in the day. It was visual. It was something to say, hey, here's an example of how you can understand what I'm talking about. Okay? And tonight, here's the question I want to pose to you. Have you ever felt like you messed up too much and you're too far gone for God? For a lot of us, we felt that. For a lot of us, maybe we feel that way right now. For a lot of us, this past year maybe was our darkest year yet of our lives. Because of COVID, being alone, not having your friends, not having your community around. For many, many different reasons. This might have been dark for you. And for a lot of us, you might be in a season where you go, I've made too many mistakes, I have messed up too much for God to still care. So every week as I come to Elevate and I hear these words about there's a purpose for my life, all that stuff, it can't be me. There's no way that God is talking about me. Because if only the people at Elevate knew what I've done, they would know that I'm too far gone. And today what we're going to dive into is a parable called the lost son, the prodigal son. Okay? And what's really interesting about this one is that this is something that, like I said, each and every one of us is going to relate to our lives, every single one of us, okay? All of us. Because we go through struggles where we feel like we messed it up, where there's no coming back from it, where we screwed up and we're beyond the point of no return. And today what I want us to dive into is this passage because I want us all to understand that that is one of the biggest lies that the enemy, that Satan, is going to put on your heart. He's going to tell you all the time throughout your life that, hey, you've done too much. There's no way that the words in the Bible are about you. And what I want you to know is that that is not true. Okay, so we're going to go to Luke chapter 15, and we're going to jump into verse 11. Okay, so again, this is the parable of the lost son, and this is such an important passage, and here's where it begins. It says, Jesus continued, there was a man who had two sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Now, let me paint a picture of what's happening here. Okay? So, just like Simba, he was born one day. All of a sudden, this guy, this father, he has sons. Okay? He has kids. Just like Simba, he's that. Okay? All four of my kids when they were born, I did that in the hospital. The doctor said, please stop and drop it. Okay? I'm just kidding. I didn't do that. They didn't trust me with my kids. Okay? Okay. But so all of a sudden, kids are born. Okay? Just like Simba. Simba was born into an amazing situation. Okay, now here's how we know that this kid, in this example, is a great situation, okay? He wants to divide his property between them. He wants to take his share of the estate. Now, if you have an estate, that means you have some sort of wealth. Maybe billions of dollars, maybe just more than most. I don't know. But an estate means that you have something of value. And back then, what would happen, why Jesus uses this as an example, is back then, when parents died or when kids became of a certain age and they became an adult and married, the parents would give them money and a portion of what they had to go start their own life. Okay, so again, we know that this kid was born into a great situation in this story that Jesus is telling us, okay? He wants us to understand, okay, this kid is in a good situation. His dad has an estate, that's great. So just like Simba, he's the prince of the Pride Lands. Like, he's raised above everybody else, the zebras, the elephants, everybody's bowing down to him. Great situation, okay? But here's the problem in this story, right away, okay? Right away in the second verse. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of my estate. What's happening here is the son is about to make a big mistake. Okay? The son in this story is about to do something that will change and alter the rest of his life. Okay? Now, if you remember in The Lion King, as Simba's growing up, whatever, his uncle Scar gets in the way, whatever, but all of a sudden there's a stampede. And what happens in the stampede? Death. Okay? His dad dies. And what does Simba think? It's all his fault. Now, we're going to get there. Okay? Verse 13. Not long after that, the young son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. Okay? So again, he makes a massive mistake and he runs away. Okay? He takes all the money and he runs. Okay? A big mistake that's going to change the course of his life. All of a sudden he's gone. Takes off the money and he begins to spend it all. Okay? And that as I was thinking through The Lion King, it probably was something where as he's living his life, he chose something to do, he did something, but he began to just live frivolously, right? He began to spend the money he had. He was like, hey, let's go, we're a car, or back then like a donkey, or whatever, right? And he was eating lots of food, parties, whatever. And he began to live a life that was kind of like this.
Turn six back on you,
I know, that's such a good song, but I couldn't keep going for 5 minutes. But so here's what's happening: is as this son gets all the money from his dad, he makes a choice and he leaves. There's a mistake that happens, but he has to live with what's going on. But he starts to spend the money. He lives Hakuna Matata. He doesn't. No worries. He's spending money. He's eating food. He's going to parties. He's doing whatever he wants. He's buying the fancy clothes. He's doing exactly what he's always wanted, spending the money that he feels like he deserves. Okay. He's just spending, he's just going and going and going, and he's doing exactly what he wants, exactly how he wants, okay? But here's what happens next. Verse 14. Verse 14. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to his flocks to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. So this guy who came from status, who was the prince of the pride land, who had everything going for him, made a choice. Okay, something happened in his life that altered the rest of it. He took the money because that's what he wanted, and he took off. He lived Hakuna Matata. He did exactly what he wanted. But he spent everything. He ran out of money. He didn't have anything left. And so he began to sell himself as a servant. And then as a servant, he was told to watch out for the flocks, to take care of them. And that was a hard job, right? And he had no food. He had nothing left at this point. And so it says that he longed for the pods that the pigs were eating. Which pods is like kibbles, like not good. Like if you're going to eat your dog food, like that's what we're talking about. Not great. Okay? And so what happens here is all of a sudden, he reaches rock bottom. He reaches a point where he feels like this is all I have to do is eat the pig's food. All I have to do is just work the fields. Like there's nothing left for me to do or to give. Like I'm out of options. And how many of you feel like you've made a choice like that you've been stuck, that there's no coming back from? Many of us in our lives have made decisions where maybe we know what we were supposed to do, we chose something else, maybe we just didn't feel like asking, so we did what we wanted because it seemed fun, we went spent frivolously. And we hit a point where we have nothing left and we go, I'm out of options. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now, I don't know where I'm supposed to go next. I'm stuck. I have nothing left to give, and now all I have is what the pigs have, which is the lowest of the low, which is they eat anything, they eat the gross, they eat the things that nobody else wants to eat, the leftovers. That's all I have left. And for many of us, there's been a time in our lives where we have hit that point. Where we look at the choices that we made, where we look at the decisions that we decided for ourselves, and we turn around and go, I don't know where I am anymore. I'm lost. I'm alone. I've left everybody behind. I've left everything I know behind because I wanted to do my own thing and didn't care how it affected other people, how it affected the people that loved me, how it affected the people who cared for me. I just did what I wanted to do. And because of that decision, I ran, and I kept running to do what I wanted, to live Hakuna Matata, to do exactly the things that I've always wanted to do that nobody ever let me do. But at the end of that road, we're stuck. At the end of that road, there's nowhere left to turn. At the end of that road, we feel like, do I try anymore? Or do I just give up? Verse 17. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? So he begins to realize, I am in such a low place, even my father's servants, because he's a servant at this point, even the people who work for my dad have more than I have. And here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and went to his father. You see, he hit this point where he said, I have to do something, but I don't know what to do. But it took him a long time to get to this point. It took him a long time to finally hit this spot where he goes, I gotta try something. I gotta try anything. And you see, as he begins to process and think of what exactly am I supposed to do, the one thing that Jesus is going to explain to us right here is that in the midst of that moment where you feel like there's nowhere left for you to go, there's one constant, there's one thing that will never, ever change. It's the fact that even in this, which we're about to see, is that God has not given up on you. God is still there for you. God is still looking for you. God is still right there saying, listen, I'm with you, and I love you, and you can never get away from me. And it looks something like this.
Her face.
You see what happens is Simba's living his life and he feels like I ran away, I can't go back, I'm stuck. But what Jesus is illustrating here, and as we continue in this, is that there's a constant that we're about to see. It's in the same way that Nala chased Pumbaa. That Nala was out looking, that Nala was going after to find answers. You remember one of the next things she says? She says, we need you. And he says, well, you left. She goes, yeah, I left to find answers, to find help. To go look for the person that was gone. And what we're about to see here with this son who left his father, who made a mistake, who felt like he couldn't return, who felt like I'm at the end of it, is that in that same way, we're about to see that God is chasing after us. God does not leave us on our own. God does not say, hey, you're out, you're dead, all right, we're done. God doesn't treat us like that. It says this in verse 20. Verse 17. So again, he would take your senses. How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving them. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Do you understand that? I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. That's rock bottom, guys. Right? Remember, Simba took off because he felt like he had done something so bad that he could never show his face again. This is it. This is the end of the line. I can never talk to my family again. I can never show up again. People don't want me. I'm just better off dead. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. In this moment, he says, I'm no longer worthy. He's not just thinking this in his head, which a lot of us think through stuff. He is now face to face with the person that he hurt the most. He's now face to face with the person that he wronged and feels like there's no coming back from this. I'm now face to face. For those of us that feel like we've done too many things wrong, that we can't come back to God. For many of us, we feel like if we ever saw God, we say, God, I'm not good. I can't do this. I'm out. You don't want me. You don't want me. You don't want me anymore. For a lot of you, you've been through this, where you said, there's no way that God would want me if he knew what I had. There's no way that God would want me. But it's the biggest lie that we've been told in our entire lives, is that God doesn't want you. Many of you stay up late at night when you're in these moments, staring at the ceiling, thinking, like, how could I have done so far off the path? How could I have done so many things wrong? How could I have messed up this bad? Where do I go here? What do I do now? We have conversations of anger, of frustration, of disappointment, where we look at ourselves harsher than anyone would look at us. We say, I've done too many things. I'm too far gone for God to love me. I'm too far gone for God to use me. I'm too far gone to go to church. I'm too far gone to... And the list goes on and on and on and on. I'm too far gone. I made too big of a mistake. One of my favorite scenes in this movie, because I feel like this depicts how we argue with ourselves. And then there's a character in this scene that I feel like really reflects and shows the character of God in these moments. So it looks like this. You can't change the past. And I really feel like Rafiki reflects God in this. And you're just sitting there, just like, dude, come on. Like, I'm right here. When we say those things, like, I can't change the past, I'm too far gone, I've done too many things, God's like, he's just laughing. And he's like, if only you knew. If only you understood. And so Jesus continues like this in verse 22. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For the son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. You see, the son was so caught up, and I made so many mistakes. I messed up so much. There's no coming back. I can't change the past. I can't do anything. And the father says, come home. Come back. You see, as soon as he gets there, I think it's so important. I think it's so important. Again, remember, this is not a real story. This isn't an illustration. This is a parable. This is a story that Jesus came up with to help identify with us and show us exactly what he's talking about. So we understand the love that God has for us. And I feel like it's very important, right? That it says, bring the best robe. Put a ring on his finger. Now, back then, rings identified family status often. Because there was an emblem or something on it. She says, bring the best robe. It doesn't say, hey, bring that old washcloth and just put on, whatever we have, it's fine. There's a specific reason why Jesus says, bring the best robe. Put the ring on his finger. Make sure people know he's a part of this family. Put sandal on his feet so he's not walking around in the dirt and in the mud. Go kill the fattened calf. Now remember, fattened calves back then was a really big deal. They would take a specific calf and they would plump it up, get it big, whatever. So there's a lot of food for a big feast, for a party, for a celebration. When you feel like you're too far gone, and when you finally understand that that's not true, and you decide, God, I'm coming back, you don't have to go very far. You see, for many of us, we feel like, I'm so far gone, I can't even turn around. And we feel like if I turn around, there's a long journey back home to try to get back to God. There's a lot of things I got to do. There's so many things that I've got to check the box and do these things. But the funny thing is as soon as you decide to turn around, you look and God's sitting right there. God doesn't say, hey, travel all the way back home. No. God is there. And he welcomes you with open arms. With a hug, with a kiss, with a ring to show you, this is my family. With the best robe. With shoes on your feet. He says, you are mine. He says, I love you. He says, I care for you more than you'll ever understand. And for many of you in this room, you feel like you haven't been a good Christian. And that may or may not be true. Maybe you've made a lot of mistakes. Maybe you've made mistakes that I could never imagine. Let me tell you, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. But the one thing that I know is true, that I believe without a shadow of doubt, that Jesus illustrates here for us and helps us to understand, is that you are never too far gone. You are never too far away from God for him to be there, to put a robe on you, to put a ring on your finger and say, this is my family. No matter what you've done, God loves you. No matter if you make a mistake, if you choose the wrong path in your life, when you finally realize that God loves you, cares for you, and is right there with you, your life changes. Because you get over the mistakes that you've made, because you don't think like Simba where he says, you can't change the past, you can't do anything now. No matter who you are, or what seat you sit in tonight, or what life you've lived, or anything, you are loved by a God in heaven. You are cared for like a child to a father who finally came home. My challenge to you tonight is to look back at your life, throw it all away. Let go of the doubt, let go of the insecurity, let go of the choices that you've made where you feel stuck. And acknowledge tonight that there's a God who is standing right behind you saying, I'm here. I'm welcoming you home. Because you are my family, because I love you. Let's pray. God, thank you for tonight. Thank you for your word. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for these stories that we have to look at and to make sense of this crazy world where there are difficult decisions, where are there